I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of the land I'm speaking from, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. I'm David Briggs, Chair of the New South Wales Division of the Colour Society of Australia, the Australian member body of the International Colour Association, or AIC. The Colour Society of Australia is a 100% volunteer-run, not-for-profit organisation and welcomes all to its events and membership. This event continues a series of webinars presented free of charge by the Colour Society of Australia New South Wales Division since 2020. We have a full house of 100 registrants from all around the world, so we're asking everyone to stay muted. But if you have questions for Ed, please submit them in the chat during the talk, and we'll get to as many as possible at the end. Edward R. Charbonneau is an adjunct faculty member of the Minneapolis College of Art and Design in Minnesota. He holds an MFA in Visual Studies from the Minnesota College and a BFA in Painting from the College of Visual Arts, formerly in St. Paul, Minnesota. He independently writes, voices, and produces the podcast Chromosphere, the Color Theory podcast, which is currently in its fourth season. Is that right, Ed, or fifth now?
Oh, yeah, actually, it's the fifth.
A fifth season with a global audience. And for the past uh, 38 years, he's created murals and large-scale installations for businesses and private individual collections. Ed was also a star student in understanding color theory,
Yes.
which he was great to have him yeah, as joining one of my courses. Um, Thank you, Edward. Would you like to start?
Yes, thank you, David. Yeah, hi, my name is Edward Charbonneau, and I am a member of the adjunct faculty at the Minneapolis College of Art and Design, or MCAD, and I have a picture of the college here. I am a painter with interests in landscape and abstraction, and I've been working on what I call my color theory research project for the last 6 years. For my presentation, I'd like to share some of my motivations, how the project began, and why I felt compelled to write the paper regarding racism in color theory. My first introduction to the notion of color theory in the fields of art and design occurred in 1988 when I was an undergraduate student at the Columbus College of Art and Design in Columbus, Ohio, in the United States. The first methodologies that I studied were those found in the publications of Johannes Itten, Albert Munsell, and Joseph Albers. 32 years later, in 2020, I was assigned to teach the class Drawing, Color, and Mixed Media in MCAD's Fine Arts Department. The course had the word color in its title, so I decided to make a list of terms for the students' reference. This list turned into color theory resources and is currently 299 pages long and growing. And as I have proceeded, I've written papers, as yet unpublished, based on the various threads I found running through the research and the text, such as on the history of harmony in color usage and concepts related to focal points. This paper, Color versus Design, which is still in progress, charts a 500-year history of color being deemed less important than drawing, design, or moreover, form. I found references to the concept as it being the first critical art theory in Europe. And in the paper, I argue that its colonialist, racist, misogynistic, and elitist ramifications are still with us today. that the history of harmonious color palettes as those which mix to a neutral color is aligned with white, gray, and black not being considered to be colors. That harmony of color represents nothingness. As I mentioned earlier, these papers are the result of threads I found running through the research. As part of this process, I began recording and self-publishing a podcast where I discuss what I'm learning, as David mentioned. And actually, David was a guest on season 2. We did an interview. And I follow various topics, such as how theorists have argued with each other over the centuries, and questions about color perception, as well as observations of color usage in the world. To say it's been an obsession might be an understatement. My wife, Erica, has banned me from using our computer for entire weekends at a time, although she let me order these vanity license plates for my truck a couple of years ago. However, it has caused me to be more aware of my perception of colors and my environment, and the many histories of how colors are understood and used in visual communication, especially within educational models. And through the podcast, and by reaching out to individuals who I've discovered during my research, I've connected to an international community. As my research has continued to broaden, I've reflected upon and questioned the value of my foundational color theory experiences and their relevance to educational models today. As per the subject of my paper, I have found that the topic of racism in color theory is broad and wide-ranging. For instance, the 1840 English language translation of Johann Wolfgang von Goethe's A Theory or a Doctrine of Colors contains this page where Goethe writes, "Lastly, it is worthy of remark that savage nations, uneducated people, and children have a great predilection for vivid colors, that animals are excited to rage by certain colors, that people of refinement avoid vivid colors in their dress and the objects that are about them, and seem inclined to banish them altogether from their presence." End quote. David Batchelor references this quote at the end of Chromophobia, which was published in 2000. Goethe also considers aesthetics and writes about which skin color he feels is the most beautiful, where he starts, "We venture to assert that the white man, that which surfaces very so and so, and that they're inclined in any particular positive color is the most beautiful." And then following note Y, translator John Eastlake disagrees with Goethe, not with his conclusion, but rather with his reasoning, giving his own reason for why he, so yeah, I mean, it's just like, um, yeah, it's, well, okay, yeah. Sorry, sometimes when I'm processing this stuff, it's just so hideous that I just can't. But anyway, continue. For the purposes of my paper and to narrow its scope, I focus on Johannes Itten, contextualizing his theories and methodologies through the lens of the white supremacist Mazdaznan religion, of which Itten was a devout follower, and specifically Itten's theories of color harmony, theories which have had profound impacts on color education and usage models. As when searching for theories of color harmony, many roads lead to these two books and the theories of Johannes Itten. Itten taught at the Bauhaus School from 1919 to 1923. He published The Art of Color in 1961, The Elements of Color is an edited and abridged version of The Art of Color, first published in 1970 by Faber Byrne. Itten's color theories have been very influential. For instance, this New Yorker article, published last summer on August 8th, uses a modified variation of Itten's 12-part color circle as its lead illustration. Itten's hues on the left are not as vibrant, and Nicholas Conrad, who designed the New Yorker image, includes purple and magenta in lieu of Itten's violet and maroon. Despite these modifications, it demonstrates that one does not need to look very far before encountering Itten's influence on contemporary color usage. Johannes Itten was the inventor of the preliminary course at the Bauhaus and was instrumental in creating its structure. Its influence cited here in 1968 by Henry P. Raleigh, shortly after Itten's books were published. And more recently, in this paper by Lorraine White Hancock, writing more generally about the lasting influence of the Bauhaus pedagogies, but about their overall impact, or her views of their overall impact on art and design education today. Itten's notion of color harmony centered on the concept that any combination of colors which mix to a neutral gray are inherently harmonious palettes. This concept has its roots in chiaroscuro, or the balance between light and dark, meaning clear and obscure, or light and shadow. Chiaroscuro is a term which Leon Battista Alberti in 1435 and an earlier author, Sannino Sannini, in the 1390s used while advising painters as to how to create relief or volume of form by using light and shadow. This was before the word chiaroscuro became a partition term in one of the canonical Renaissance modes of color, describing extreme clear and obscure lighting effects that are often very theatrical, also referred to as tenebrism. Through the centuries, color circles took their form as theorists and philosophers placed colors that mixed to white, gray, or black across from each other, establishing the concept of complementary colors as those which complete themselves by mixing to an achromatic neutral color, such as white, black, or gray. As with chiaroscuro, where harmony was achieved between a balance of light and dark, color achieved balance by mixing to a non-color. Itten's color star is a flattened sphere with the North Pole as white at the center and the South Pole spread out across its circumference as black. It's based on Otto Runge's Farbenkunkel of 1807. The 12 points of the star mirror in number the 12 lessons described in the book Mazdaznan, Health and Breath Culture, as well as the 12, quote, Aryan, unquote, tribes identified by Mazdaznan lore, published in monthly periodicals such as Mazdaznan and the Messenger and the Sun Worshipper. In a later publication called Mazdaznan, another monthly periodical magazine, I found this passage in the January 21 issue, which was the same year Itten designed his color star. It is typical or representative of how writers conflated Mazdaznan teaching with the divine, elevating practitioners to being godlike. Yeah, the latter makes him akin to God, at one with the Creator. or in harmony with the divine. The two primary theses of Itten's color theories and pedagogical methodologies reside in the subtitle of his English language publication, The Art of Color, the subjective experience and objective rationale of color. Itten believed that subjective experience is possible to define and classify, and secondly, color usage requires an objective rationale. Itten proclaimed all colors which mix to an achromatic gray, white or black, color to be objectively harmonious. And as such, he centered his definition of a person's subjective color preference or an individual's color aura, which he termed to be their subjective color tones or subjective timbre, as residing in the colors of a person's hair, skin, and eyes. Itten, in the 1961 The Art of Color, used coded language to describe his students as possessing individual aptitudes or of being types, whereas in the 1970 Studiengabe and the Elements of Color publications, the specific classifications of his students is defined by their eye, hair, and skin colors. These theories, which Itten developed regarding subjectivity, reflect his white supremacist mindset. He proceeds to then instruct educators to not assign the same projects to students of different hair, eye, and skin colors. Itten was a devout follower of a racist religion called Mazdaznan. The religion held white supremacist beliefs that the color of a person's skin was an indicator of the purity of their blood and a marker of their intellectual capabilities. The view that individuals of differing skin, hair, and eye colors lack the intellect to comprehend shared experiences in classroom settings align with the central tenet of the Mazdaznan religion's white supremacist teachings, which contextualize Itten's motivation to write. The concept of color harmony should be removed from the subjective attitude into that of objective principle. Due to this theory of harmony, we have a proliferation of complementary-based color palettes prevalent in art and design fields today, as Itten theories have had a profound impact on educational models at all levels. Itten's mandate for an objective definition of harmony necessitated that he also address a person's subjectivity in color preferences. Itten's tying of a person's subjectivity to their eye, hair, and skin colors align with doctrine of the Mazdaznan religion, who Itten was a devout follower. For instance, the passages found in the book Mazdaznan Health and Breath Culture, written by the religion's founder, center on a fixation that the composition or consistency of a person's blood is a key indicator to the person's capacities in life. In 1923, after departing the Bauhaus faculty, Itten lived for 3 years at the Mazdaznan temple known as Ariana in Herleberg, Switzerland. While at Ariana in 1923, Itten delivered the eulogy for David Ammon, the Father Ammon cited here. In this quote from the Mazdaznan Health and Breath Culture, Mazdaznan Health and Breath Culture, So Amen is being quoted as saying, blood is the essential race builder. The consistency of the blood determines the infallible sign of racial relation. The purer the blood, the clearer the pigment. The darker the skin, the lower the race. Blood is not only the carrier of the inherited, but it also the progenitor to all the attainable spiritual tendencies. Monthly periodical magazines published by the religion gave readers regular health and lifestyle advice as a means of purifying one's blood and the blood of their offspring, so as to bring a transparent race of humans into existence, what the Mazdaznan religion viewed as the quote unquote seventh race of humanity. This transparent race, here referred to as children of light, represent, according to Mazdaznan doctrine, the next phase of humanity. Here we have a quote 50 years later in the Elements of Color, where Itten is referencing children and light, which Itten may have had this new iteration of humanity in mind when he celebrated the birth of his first child, whom he painted as a toddler in 1921 and 22 as a tribute to the infant's whiteness, proclaiming that his transparent whiteness foreshadowed the coming of man. Or when he wrote in his book of 1963, Design and Form, the basic course at the Bauhaus, regarding the topic he named subjective forms, he describes a student within the initial sentences of the first paragraph of the chapter. Quote, her eyes were like moonstones, and her pale skin was transparent. Writing in the Mazdaznan Journal of Aryan Wisdom and Art of Living, Itten's article, Racial Theory and Artistic Development, in 1923, the year he left the faculty of the Bauhaus, Itten shared with the Mazdaznan faithful his teaching philosophy. Oops. Itten describes the art history studies that he undertook and the conclusions or interpretations Itten claimed the studies yielded. This writing foreshadows what he would later write in The Art of Color and how artists mediate three aspects of color aesthetics: the visual, mental, and the spiritual, which correspond to these attributes. Artworks and their authors capable of representing only one or a combination of two aspects of Itten's color aesthetics without the presence of the third are deemed failures by Itten within his late mid-century text. As he found in 1923 that, quote, only in the white race did the balance of the three temperaments come about, unquote. 32 years later, in 1955, 6 years before the publication of The Art of Color, Itten lamented while attending the opening of the Ulm School of Design in Ulm, Germany, that he and Walter Gropius, the director of the Bauhaus School, didn't see eye to eye regarding his, quote, ideas about a new foundation for culture, end quote, which led to Itten's departure from the Bauhaus faculty. Therefore, within the pages of The Art of Color and the Elements of the Color, Itten's insistence that all colors fall into an objective scheme is consistent with his worldview that people fall into what he defined as their subjective likes and dislikes. Given his white supremacist mindset, he defined a person's subjectivity and termed it to be a person's subjective color tones or subjective timbre. In specific phrasing of subjektiven Farbenklang, or subjective color tones in the English language, as well as subjective timbre in the elements of color, have many parallels to Mazdaznan literature, which repeatedly referenced rhythm of breath to oxygenate blood as a vehicle of racial transcendence, as well as resonance and vibration. This passage, published in the monthly periodical Mazdaznan, January 1914, is an early example conflating race with vibration. Color of races is due to climactic reasons so much, is not due to climactic reasons so much as to the vibratory activities of the cosmos, which correspond to colors and produce them. Kali is black, for black is the color of disintegration. The black color will disappear with the disappearance of the Kali vibration. Black and brown races will disappear from the earth, not in the sense that those individuals will die, but rather that they will go through a change in their vibration, and color will be changed. Of course, this will cause the death of many of them, owing to the difficulty in adjustment of themselves to this new vibration. End quote there. Regarding his theory of color design, Itten writes, deliberate and intellectual construction is the conveyance that carries us to the portals of this new reality. Serendipitously, he made a lithographic print of a futuristic structure called the House of the White Man in 1921, which, according to Itten, vis-a-vis a Mazdaznan prophecy, would house the forthcoming so-called seventh race of humanity, a transparent race ascendant through whiteness. This evolution in humanity was predicted by Mazdaznan lore to occur in 1960, the year before The Art of Color was ultimately first published. Itten's second hypothesis in the various editions of The Art of Color and Bieran's The Elements of Color states that all harmonious color palettes mix to a neutral gray color. Itten adopted the 19th century view that afterimages are proof of the mind's ability to maintain visual stasis, i.e., harmony, by spontaneously producing the complement of an inducer color. The product of these two complementary colors comprise the entire spectrum and therefore complete each other by forming an achromatic white, gray, or black color. Based on that theory, Itten surmises that any assortment of pigments which mix to a neutral gray or black color inherently form harmonious palettes. In this way, he conflated additive and subtractive color mixing by confusing how subtractive pigments mix with how additive wavelengths are perceived as colors. Itten's stated goal was to remove the subjectivity of personal color preferences and define an objective principle. He claimed that the formula brought a heightened degree of order and truth, end quote, to a palette. Due to this theory of harmony, we have a proliferation of complementary-based color palettes prevalent in art and design fields today, as Itten's theories have had profound impacts on educational models at all levels. Here we have a breakdown of a Ritz cracker package design palette. Nabisco wouldn't give me permission to use an image of their packaging in this presentation. Oops. And here's Frosted Flakes. Kellogg's as well wouldn't give me permission to use an image of their packaging in this presentation either. But I tried. This recipe for harmonious color palettes has been taught in art schools for the past 100 years. It cited authors such as Herring and Goethe regarding the phenomena of successive contrast or after images as proof that the eye is seeking equilibrium by spontaneously generating the complements of the color it sees, thus forming neutral gray and balance in perception. Staring at the disk on the left may produce the color of its afterimage in the disk on the right. Goethe writes in the section Harmony of the Completed State, referencing that complementary colors comprehend the entire spectrum, that complementary colors mix to gray, white, or black, hence they comprehend the whole. And the existence of afterimages are the proof. Itten's two theses rest on his definitions of objectivity and subjectivity. Defining an objective harmony necessitated him to address the subjectivity of individual preferences. Due to the Mazdaznan religion's obsession with defining race in terms of the purity of one's blood, Itten, in the 1961 The Art of Color, used coded language to describe his students as possessing individual aptitudes or being of, quote, types. Whereas in the 1970s, Studentengaben and the Elements of Color publications, the specific classification of his students is defined by their eye, hair, and skin colors. Framing subjective preferences as such, he immediately follows up with written instructors to educators to not assign the same projects to cohorts of students of different eye, hair, and skin colors, as they are incapable of comprehending each other. Is Itten's formula for color harmony itself racist? Not necessarily. He was reiterating the formula of color harmony described by others, including 19th century theorists and philosophers such as Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, Ewald Hering, Arthur Schopenhauer, and Otto Runge, whom Itten references in his writing. Were his motivations, methodologies, and conclusions based on a racist mindset? Undoubtedly. Itten wrote, the concept of color harmony should be removed from the realm of subjective attitude into that of objective principle, end quote. He, Itten, promoted an objective principle of harmony which worked to remove the value of individuality and ranked lower in esteem subjective personal preferences, tastes, points of view, and cultural traditions. The insistence that all colors fall into an objective scheme is consistent with Itten's worldview that people would fall in his defined view of their subjective color tones or subjective timbre, that the objective system subjugates and dictates personal choice. I would like to read the conclusion for my paper. The teaching and practices of color theories and their many applications need to always welcome and embrace questions, re-examinations, and revisions. It is my view, after concerted research and practice with Johannes Itten's methodologies, that his principles should not have been embraced and promoted throughout and after his tenure. His books have had enormous and, in my opinion, harmful impacts on the teaching of color across many fields of study. Over the decades, how many color usage traditions have been devalued, sidelined, dismissed, or rejected outright by the mass adoption within educational models of Itten's prescribed color theories? In view of his Mazdaznan mindset, Itten's justifications for an objective color harmony and a subjective color predilection are an anathema to contemporary teaching practices. How is it how is it that after first reading the elements of color in 1988 and Itten's clearly written definitions of his students' color preferences based on their eye, hair, and skin colors, did it take me 37 years to ask these questions myself? How do we challenge what is presented to us as canon in the field of color theory? Who historically has not been recognized? What new ideas, concepts, and methodologies regarding color, its usage, and pedagogical approaches have yet to emerge? In terms of who historically has not been recognized, the paper I am currently working on is titled Carrie Van Biema's Goethe Triangle. In 1930, Van Biema wrote a book entitled Farben und Form als lebendige Kraft, or Colors and Forms as Living Forces, in which she includes the color triangles for which she designed and published. In 1963, Joseph Albers published nearly exact replicas without crediting Carrie Van Biema in his book Interaction of Color, referring to the various color triangles as the, quote, rarely published, beautiful Goethe triangle, end quote. And thank you. That concludes my presentation.
Thanks. Excuse me. Thanks very much, Ed. That's great. A
Thanks.
little loud applause from the audience. Great.
Well, thank you. Thanks. Yeah.
Okay. So we've got a couple of questions already in the chat, but I hope there'll be some more coming through.
Yeah.
So perhaps would you like me to read the first one?
Sure. I'm looking at my screen. Yeah.
Or you can
Um,
find.
I'm
Oh,
finding them now. Yes.
okay. I'll read the first one anyway. From George. I know very little about Itten, but I'm interested to know if his personal beliefs were ever challenged, as they would seem to be in conflict with the art community at large. His color theory seems objective, uh, thought. His color theory seems objective, though I think he seems to be personally subjective. His color
Mhm.
theory seems to be objective, though uh, he seems to be personally subjective. Thoughts?
Right, right. I have yet to find um, any evidence of a lecture or a book being written that challenged him within his lifetime or in a periodical. Most of the time, the connection to Mazdaznan is framed by the writer as a esoteric religion that focused on vegetarianism and doing exercises like yoga-like exercises, these exercises that the founder referred to as the Egyptian postures. There were 12 different lessons that covered these different postures that increased in difficulty. And that has been my experience as I've searched and searched and searched for different references. Mazdaznan is typically represented as a rather benign, um, not in all cases. I have sources in my paper that helped me um, figure out some of which I shared. I tried to include sources on in the presentation as we went, my references. Does that answer your question, or did I cover?
Oh, sorry, George, if you want to,
Uh,
just a minute. Sorry. I'll
yeah, he writes yes. Thank you. Well, thanks,
oh,
George,
good.
and thank you for
Okay.
the question. Yeah, that's
I'll just give people permission to unmute themselves from now on. So if you want to respond,
yeah.
we can do it that way.
Part of the thing with me was, having knowledge of that chapter in the Elements of Color called Subjective Timber, and it's in the um uh when I was reading it, I always just thought, well, it was early and kind of writing it off myself, like, well, it was Germany between the wars and the Nazis were coming to power and these religions, and then I realized obviously that it was published in 1961, so he had plenty of time to rearrange his and then 1970, and then I've since found articles that I forget the exact name of it, but it was Mazdaznan. I'm not getting it right, but it was something along the lines of Mazdaznan, the religion that was so racist that the Nazis banned it. Um, and but yeah, but even further investigation there, I think what I've encountered is that the Nazis just didn't want any competition, so they banned a lot of different religions like that were a mixture of Christianity and like some Eastern religions.
Yeah. I had one question just before we go to the others. Is it active today? Do there still Mazdasnans active?
Oh, I don't think so. I think, but until recently, there was one group of people in Canada, I want to say, that were, yeah, but I think the literature changes dramatically as you go into the 50s and 60s, and it really focuses on health and well-being and their I think one of their most successful publications was a cookbook. Um, so
Hmm.
and I yeah.
I noticed just before there's a Facebook group called Mazdasnan. I think it's probably just automatically generated by Facebook, but other
Mhm.
people sort of post breathing exercises and things like that occasionally to it.
Right. Yeah, the connection between the breathing to purify the blood is is not in the more recent literature.
Yep.
It gets dropped.
Okay. Would you like me to read another thing from the chat? Or would
Yeah,
you like to?
yeah. Sorry,
Okay.
I'm a little. Yeah, this is.
Okay. All right. Amazing presentation. Um, okay, this is from Marcia Cohen. Wondering if you looked at other racist scholarship that was current at the time, racist in quotations. Um, like eugenics, for example.
I have not. Um, it's been recommended to me to look at Rudolf Steiner's early writing,
Yes.
and I just haven't gotten around to. Yeah, I just it's on my list, and
Mm.
yeah, yeah. I've stayed in the lane. I guess now that I'm thinking about it specifically, I've stayed in the realm of color theory and people writing about color, and it hadn't occurred to me yet to go more vertically across other fields and how that could be, which would make sense because the field of color theory is informed by virtually every other field that I can think of. Um,
Yes, well, Steiner, of course, very much influenced by Goethe in his writings on color.
yeah, the more I'm learning and putting things together, the more I'm seeing Zerfarbler as like an inflection point where he wrote down uh, I don't know, like all these threads coming together appear in that book, and then they branched out again from that book, and
Mm.
so many things can be traced right back to it,
Yeah.
for right or for wrong. Uh, the path generally leads there. Um,
For sure. All right. I think next one from Kate. Thank you. Very interesting perspective. Is there an area of color application affected most? Interior design and taste is one that springs to mind. Is there an area?
right.
Yeah.
Well, there's the other paper that I'm currently working on. So the Carrie Van Biema's Goethe triangle paper. And then I've been working on this other paper called Color versus Design that I mentioned. And I think that um, this there's a very long history. I basically trace it back to Vasari in 1550, writing the lives of the artists, where he starts the argument over which is better, design, drawing, or form itself, or color. And he's leaning towards drawing, design, and form is better than color. And that enters into education through the European academies as they develop in the 1600s. And I'm following this thread that goes straight right through it to to the point where even David Batchelor writes about it in Chromophobia, mentioning that Charles Blanc in the 1873, I want to say he wrote his book, where he identifies design as masculine and color as feminine. And it fits, yeah, it fits neatly into this misogynistic model that is already ubiquitous. Um, and so I think in I think it's still with us today, and Itten's ideas didn't conflict with it, and his writing is so simple and straightforward to follow. When he's writing, a lot of his writing is very much like prose, like just like reading a cookbook, like instructions on, what he thinks that this contrast is, or this, that, or another thing. When he breaks into more poetic kind of writing, he kind of turns it on and off as he goes through the book, like children are the color, or colors are the children of light, that kind of thing. There, it mimics so like so exactly the type of writing from Mazdaznan, these monthly magazines that they published. I think the first one might have been in 1901, and I've read thousands of pages of these things, and so. So in one sense, he's got this like idea that's like right below the surface, I think, that is motivating him to try and make this objective, this objectivity. And yet it's put forth in such a simple way that it becomes very easy to teach and keep in the back of your head. Um,
Okay.
and where, yeah, because so like this color versus design and then going back to interior design and stuff like that, and just the loss of color in general across, it seems, the world. I mean, there's so many factors, but there's been this thing in the past 500 years in education that has been hidden that is promoting form over color and saying that color is specious, deceptively beautiful, not to be trusted, decorative, um, feminine, erratic, change, because colors change as the light changes, whereas the cup that you're drawing stays the same from day to day. But the colors of the cup change based on all sorts of factors, including the viewer. And two people likely can't see the same colors within the same cup, and so yeah, through the centuries they took that to like as an argument against color.
Mm.
And
Thanks, Ed. There's still quite a few more questions, and I
yeah,
apologize.
sorry, I could.
They seem to be reorganizing themselves in my box for some reason, so they're not in the same order. But the next one I'm seeing at the moment is from Barbara Maloney. I'd like to know if Itten's white supremacist views changed as he aged. Are there more recent publications by Itten that would distinguish that? You kind
uh no, I can't think of anything. um there is He mentions Mazdaznan in the introduction to the book Design and Form, the color, the basic course. But he uses a different spelling like Mazdaz. I can't remember exactly. He misspells it, but um so it, so it's and he wrote that in 63, I want to say. So he acknowledged it there. Um, I haven't encountered anybody where they're saying he had a life-changing moment and moved away from all of those things. Um, yeah.
okay, thanks, Ed. Wayne says, I haven't read Itten's books, but did he give any examples of inferior, quote, subjective, in quotes, harmonies, or just smear the capabilities of people, uh, sorry,
Right.
of people of color in words, leaving readers to impose their own prejudices?
Right. Yeah, in the book, he does talk in the art in the element in the art in the art of color. He does in the chapter Subjective Timber. He has images of his students and with little portraits and images of the paintings that they made and little analyses of what they did. And in the elements of color, Buren leaves that out and goes on. In both cases, though, Itten writes about how he used these analysis to determine the best career for a person. And yeah, yeah, and he's very, yeah. Well, and that's where seasonal color uh, analysis had part of its origin as well. I don't know if it's a total. There might be somebody here who is more knowledgeable of that history than me. But Carolyn Jackson in the book Color Me Beautiful cites Itten's chapter and page for the uh, subjective timber, the page where he's describing what the students of varying eye, hair, and skin color as her resource or like the authority that she's citing for her ideas about whether or not someone is a warm, cool, or a winter, spring, summer, fall. It started off, and from what I understand, that was changed rather quickly because it was realized that every person of color basically was a winter, and that since then it's evolved to have many, many more distinguishing um, designations. Um,
Okay. Kerry's found a link to a website, mazdaznan.eu, that seems to have a bit of material on it, a blog and some
oh,
articles. Uh, um, well, Josephine says Itten was in the high school curriculum in the 1960s and 70s. In New South Wales art studies, it caught on quickly. Yes, that's my impression too, that it was
yeah,
it really became very influential from that time, especially from when the mass-produced edition came out.
yeah, it was very inexpensive.
Wow. Yeah. Um, Trish says, I have found that artists have incorporated all of Itten and others, but then claim to be ruleless and doing their own thing. And take that
Right.
comment. Okay.
Um, yeah, well, I mean, it's let me sorry, I'm losing my I write in my paper in the um uh sorry, just gonna pull this up because I kind of yeah, I think that's a significant statement and one worth really thinking about. Um, I write in my abstract, since 1961, Itten's deeply flawed methodologies regarding color usage and instruction have become entangled within educational systems and traditions to such degrees that their origins are nearly invisible within the shroud of their authority. And I think that I think that in many respects it's invisible. Uh, like where this is all from, and that I learned from my teacher, and now I'm teaching my students, and then they're going to become teachers, some of them, and they'll be teaching like what they know. And as I can only teach what I think I know, and the information just passes along through the generations.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep, for sure. Branka Speha is here. Thank you, Ed. Great presentation. Fantastic to hear about Carrie Van Beamer. I look forward to reading that paper. Okay.
yeah,
Okay. Great.
thank you.
Um, uh, Madeline Snook, are you aware of beige mum aesthetic in popular culture? Beige mum aesthetic? And what do you
No,
think this is a modern repercussion of or link to Itten's color theories?
I'm not familiar with that. What is it again?
Beige mum
Beige
aesthetic.
mom.
Beige mum
Okay.
aesthetic. Okay, there's some.
Oh, that term itself. Right, like grayish is like the of right where the color is disappearing. Like in cars in the United States, they're mostly red, yellow, or mostly white, gray, and black, and occasionally red. It's generally always the same shade of red somehow. And every once in a while I'll see like a blue or a yellow one, but it's pretty rare. So there's something out there that's where I think this color being uh, subservient to design and secondary and tied to all of these pejorative meanings and implications, I believe is also an invisible thread that is running through educational models. Um, yeah, that's my argument in this new paper. And that, even the color wheel itself takes all of color and it puts it into a shape. It's confined to that, and it presents itself as a scientific chart, which is reliable. And after taking David Briggs's class, I can tell you most certainly that I know of no co- color wheel or color circle chart that reliably accomplishes what it claims to uh, to be the authority of. And well, and many of them claim to hold the secret of harmony, and that's why those colors are across from each other. But even there, John Eastlake in his translation of Zerfarberlehre, in his notes, he takes issue with Goethe saying that it's wrong to think that green is the after image or that red is the after image of green because the after image is always the inverse value or lightness of the color. So a chromatic green is generally dark-ish. So its after image is generally light and vibrant. And for me, it's more towards magenta or this color called purpur before they had a proper word for magenta. Goethe writes about that. And and so Eastlake is saying in 1840 that basically all color wheels are wrong because the red is not like pink, whereas the yellow and blue or yellow and blue, they're inherently lighter and darker than each other at their most intense. So it's possible to make the perfect after image of each of them, as Jasper Johns has done with many of his prints and paintings.
Well, it depends on what the after image is seen on, right? If you see it on a white background or if you can see them
Yeah,
on a black background and they look very different.
yeah, totally, no
Yeah.
doubt.
Yeah. All right. We're getting they're coming in faster than we're dealing with them. So
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
no,
sorry. I
that's all
gotta
right. Just but if you want
tend
some
to
of these
like
we
go
can
off
just
my
take
tangent.
as a comment. This next one is might be too open-ended to say too much about, but any comment from Anne Jackson, any comment on Itten's contributions to the understanding of color and color relationships apart from his racist views? Did you want to say anything about that or?
Um, well, he's often cited, he has these seven contrasts that he describes with a chapter for each one. And uh, I like to refer people to look at Emily Noyes Vanderpool and her book Color Problems because she has a list of contrasts as well. And I have no evidence. Her book was written in 1902, and I have no evidence that Itten was aware of her book. I wouldn't be surprised if he was. His contrast, he evidently first wrote out in 1914, and he got them from his teacher, Adolf Holzel, studied at the Stuttgart Academy with him. And Carrie Van Bema was a student of Holzel's at the same time. And and so Itten writes out his seven contrasts, Emily Noyes Vanderpool has, I believe, like nine. She breaks simultaneous contrast into several different components, a couple, like three. And then she has a list of color harmonies that I think are like 11 points. And then she finishes it by saying it's safe to assume that any colors can be harmonized by using some of these principles. So she's presenting them just as tools within a designer's or an artist's tool kit, not as laws. And then she even writes right in that chapter that something I'm paraphrasing, but it's very conversational the way she writes. She writes, and now we come to the idea that colors which mix to gray are inherently harmonious. And the next sentence is she writes, to which I reply, no. And she capitalizes the word no, even though there's just a comma. So she's very serious about it, which which I think is just wonderful. Um, so yeah, Color Problems was just republished in 2018, I want to say 17, and I think there's a scan of it online on the internet uh,
Mm.
database library.
Internet Archive, archive.org.
Yeah,
Yep, yep, that's right. Just on Itten, I think we have a recording of a presentation by Robert Hirschler on Itten from uh,
yeah,
International Colour Day a few years ago, and that's on the Colour Society YouTube channel. And of course, there's also an article, especially one by Andrea Schwartz in uh, 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 the AIC journal from 2023. So I can put the link for those in as well for a
yeah.
modern sort of assessment of it. And, um, okay. So there's a lot of comments, thank yous and so on. I'll just see if there's
Uh, Thanks. Sorry.
Kerry's also got a link to an article about the about Mazdaznan, I think. So you might anyone might like to get the link from the chat now.
Yeah.
Um, Carissa, I see a connect with the children of light, as this is referring to learning phase with Steiner. My understanding is Steiner's framework was far more systematized and philosophical, whereas Itten's practice was ritualistic and body, sorry,
Mm, mm-hmm,
rich and bodily, maybe borderline racism.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Right.
So
I think next on my list is reading Rudolf Steiner's.
yes, it sounds like you're going to have to.
Yeah.
Well, of course, Stein has enormous influence still today.
Yeah.
Can we have Ed's email
Oh, sure.
from that's from Marsha Cohen?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I can put it in there.
Just put it in the chat if you like. Yeah. Okay.
Oops.
Um, Amy Dishman, maybe this is a comment. As you said, this is all invisible to most of us. How can we start dismantling racism in color theory? Which I guess you're touching on that in your paper.
Right. Yeah, how can we? Well, an incredible resource for me has been Alexandra Laska, um, and the books that she has published. She is very forward about writing about her intentions to raise uh, under um, like women in the field who have been not recognized and historically, and who are and to change the canon. My hope is that the canon changes so that Emily Noyes Vanderpool and Carrie Van Bema and Mary Gardside. Otherwise, actually, Alexander Laska found Gartside's gravestone and will recently and determined that her name is Martha Gartside. Uh, my hope is that every art student in the world, or I don't know. No, I shouldn't. You can't replace one set of rules with another. But let's just say in my class, I make a point that my students hear those names of those women theorists before they hear the word Albers or Munsell or and so I think part of it too for me was in that regard was when I started my project and started writing this list that became color theory resources. When I got to the names and I started writing down Munsell and Goethe and all those people and Itten, I quickly realized after about five names that all I could think of were white European North American men. And so that realization, which I was ashamed of, I just thought to myself, I'm 50 years old and I claim to be somebody knowledgeable of this topic, and here I am. And so then, and then I just happened to be working with a graduate student, Jordan Brennan. We met before the semester, and she had just bought Alexander Laska's most recent book that had all those people in it. It was just incredibly serendipitous. So, um, yeah, I
Mm.
guess it begins by looking. Well, George Washington Carver, look at his work. He taught at the Tuskegee University in Alabama and made his own pigments from local, stuff that was all around him, the dirt and the soil and plants that are native to the area. And he designed a color theory. He designed, um,
When was this
yeah,
said? When was this?
I want to say he published a book, I want to say 1901.
Mm.
I was just looking at, I forget how he lived a long life, I think, but I can't remember the range.
Mm.
Um,
And the last name was Carver?
uh, Carver, George Washington Carver.
George. Okay, great.
Yeah.
I'll have to
Yeah, he
write
wanted
that down.
people to be able to paint their houses vibrant colors. He created an indigo that is incredible.
Mhm.
Um, one of the one of the most amazing versions of indigo that I've ever seen a picture of. I've never seen it in person.
Okay. Well, Madeline has uh, enlightened us on beige mums. Beige mums are predominantly white mothers who have reached social media notoriety by actively selecting only beige, white, black, or grey colours to wear and to decorate their home, including repainting their brightly coloured children's toys to match their aesthetic. So
Wow.
that's a new one on me.
Well, and Goethe was writing about this in 1810. So it's been with us for at least that long. And he writes about it like it's common knowledge. So he didn't make it up. He was just reporting what he was seeing around him. And it was at the end of his life that he wrote that book, I believe. So he had been around for quite a while.
Okay. All right. I think we'll have to finish pretty soon. The questions keep coming in. This is you've
Yeah.
you've generated a lot of interest and discussion, Ed. I'll you can answer this one or not as you like. From George, if you could sit down with Itten for coffee today, what would you say to him?
Oh, wow. uh,
Would you
yeah,
sit down?
wow.
Would you sit down for coffee with him?
Would I sit down with him? Well, I I don't know what I would say, but one of the most interesting things I've done in this project is ask people to meet with me and have coffee or something like that, lunch maybe, but usually it's just coffee, kind of midday, and just ask them, "What do you think about color? Tell me what you think about color." And I pretty much just take notes, and it generally tends to turn into a conversation, but I try to I purposely let them lead. As you can tell, I'm kind of a talker, so I don't know. But I've learned so much about people's rationale and actually the paper that I'm working on, color versus design, has come out of some of those conversations where people are confiding in me that, you know, they feel that their work is too color forward and that maybe it's not being taken in seriously intellectually, and that it's garish, or it's all these words, those beige mothers, those beige moms, um, that they feel a pressure to remove the color from uh, from their work, and I'm like, that to me is wrong. But I understand that pressure. It is true, and they're articulating it to me, and I've heard it from more than one person. And so, yeah, maybe I would just sit there and let them talk, get it over with as quickly as possible.
Well, thanks, Ed. That's great. That might be a good point to finish on. I'll just in the chat there, Cecilio has given us a link to an article by about George Washington Carver. So just
Yes.
get a make a note of that before we go,
Yeah,
if you like.
I believe I'm familiar with that article. Yeah, there
Okay,
was a project of painting houses um, in Chicago, colors from his recipes, I believe, if that might be a part. Yeah. Um, yeah, really cool stuff.
great. Okay then, Ed. Well, I think let's get away before anyone can send any more questions in.
Oh, well, thank you so much.
Thanks very much. That was really wonderful presentation. You can see all the applause coming in. Just let people send that through, and a
Thanks.
few
Thank you
more
so much, everyone, for taking the time out of your day to
comments.
to attend and support my research. I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to share, and yeah,
Right.
yeah, it's really
Well,
special.
we'll include a link to your paper that this is based on in the email with the recording link, and we'll also put it on the YouTube channel in the notes there. Great. All right then. Thanks, Ed. Till we
Yeah,
meet
thank
again.
you.
Okay.